not involved with OZK at all.
Asmongold going
Nope.
some
Done.
slop.
I haven't been for a while, and so yeah, I'm chilling.
Streamer drama.
So
slop,
if there's something
react
going
slop,
on with them or anything else, that's
it's just
that's
sloppy
up to
all
them.
around, right?
It's not my thing. And
My juicer's
I've
massive.
been a very relaxed guy. Why? I mean, there's a
XQc
lot of
goat.
reasons why. I can talk about it just for a couple of minutes.
I think the legacy
But
just
the
speaks for
main
itself. I
reason
don't need to
why
elaborate
is
on
that
this.
well, there's a couple of
But
reasons. Number
I
one,
do need to
like
say
my
that you have
content
to
and doing
place the
like
goat.
controversial political content
glazing the goat
is
is
really
good.
hard to like kind of synthesize with content that's not like that because of just how extreme it is and how polarizing it is. So it's harder to find sponsors. It's harder to to do things for that reason.
True.
And so
That's not, Chad, that's not even a question mark. That is just objectively true. The person who says nothing but feels all the bad ways will get 10 times more opportunities than the person who says anything. The only way to gain, the only way that this isn't true is if you either say absolutely nothing or you're a legitimate puppet of public opinion. You only say things that people agree with. That's just, who wants to do that? Some streamers want to do that. Not everybody wants to do that. Like, don't put that on him for not doing that. Like, brother, if I stated, if I had mostly agreed upon takes on the internet that you guys agree with, right? And then I had a few takes that are correct, genuinely, it is objectively correct, but the public doesn't agree, I lose a fuck ton. Literally. That's how the world works. That's why a lot of people, I'm not gonna say any names, a lot of people go on stream, and when it's an easy hitter, free hitter, let's say, what's bad? Is violence bad? Guys, I have a take today for you, chat. Guys, hold on. Everybody back up for a minute here. Violence bad. Violence not good. Boom. Easy. Bang, 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 bang. Bing, 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 bing. Oh my god, this streamer is so correct. This streamer is so, oh my god, we love this guy. Any opinion about this or that, which is not a 100-0 like violence, right? It's more kind of like it's like an 80-20. Even if he says the correct one, which is 80%, you're losing on the 20%.
Yes.
On the next one, 90-10, he says the 90, lose on that 10. And as you navigate
I
those
don't know what he's
ratios,
talking
whatever,
about, but
you are losing
right.
a lot of value.
I think
as a brand,
I need
and for sponsors,
to let it
you look a lot
marinate
less
in my head.
valuable
I don't
because
get it. I
you're
think the
chunking
editor could
here,
have some
there,
context
here,
and started
so
the video.
people just say nothing.
He's right.
And do
Right, I
easy
think I
hitters.
know what he's talking
So,
about, and I think he's
don't
right.
say that like what he's saying is not true. It's just how it works, though.
Because he's
So
the goat,
that's
and
one
the
big
goat
reason.
never
and
loses.
so like
right?
I don't
He has
want to like kind of
W
brief
takes
other
all
people
around.
because I'm going down
Every
what
day.
I think to be
Every week,
the best
every stream.
direction for like my channel, my career, my actions, right? Like this is what I want to do as a person. And so when I want to do that and I want to go down that path, then I'm going to do that and go down that path.
Okay, let me ask. When it comes down, right, to let's say, oh, I'm gonna use a good one. The fucking like Luigi assassination guy or whatever the fuck, right? How many streamers or brands actually that people that talk about stuff? How many people talked about it and had a stance on it? I mean, about less than 5%. Less than 5% of big figures said something about it. Why? Because it's kind of tough to, like, you're gonna look like you're saying the right thing, but then people don't really agree with it or whatever, because people want outrage. So it's just it's a no-gain situation. So a lot of them said nothing yet, right? So in normal scenarios, they'll say, guys, we're against violence or whatever. But then, oh, this guy killed somebody, but the public agrees with violence. So now it's like, ooh, wait, do I say something about this or whatever? And a lot of them don't say anything yet. I mean, I think those are the guys that play the game like that. And I mean, you know who these people are. I mean, it's most of them really. But for you to deny the existence of that little game people play is ridiculous. You're crazy.
Then
I'm not crazy, you're crazy.
And go down that path because I think that's the right option. But I also don't want to put anybody else
crazy.
at risk in doing that, obviously.
I'm not crazy.
So that's why I separated myself, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. It's
But I
because,
know
and this is a mutual
he's
thing,
still
right?
still
And
16, one of them
even
off
if
the
it
card.
wasn't, I still would agree with it. And so the haters won. Well, it's not necessarily haters won. It's more that a lot of people, I don't want to.
Whoa. It's not just the haters one, though.
I just couldn't prove it.
even
got
internally they
distracted,
pressure them. I'm not.
You got an idiot
I
at
know
the coffee
he probably
shop.
can't say a lot of things.
Lie for
I
him.
know, I'm not a hater of Will Neff,
Yeah,
but
you
he
think
made it
this is
very
bad?
clear that his stance
Because
was this guy stops doing the
You
polarizing
know that billboard?
shit, right? This guy stops the.
Really? Are you telling me the
opinions
man
that
just
don't
happened to
correlate
fall
with
on
the opinion
that?
Or I'm out.
No.
Right? He said that on stream.
He orchestrated it.
And I'm sure other persons internally at OTK feel the
Come
same
on,
way.
man.
And on top
He
of that, they're also
defecated
compounding
through a
the
sunroof.
fact that, yo, dude,
And
when
I
you
saved
do these
him.
things, people lose jobs.
But I shouldn't
people are
have.
pressuring
I didn't know at
Asmongold
the
a lot
time,
with
right?
this. So at that
Well, I
point, it's
did.
like just continuing to exist.
I took him in a moment for
around the Vicky brand.
Like,
And
what
he's
was I
being
thinking?
kind of held
man?
against him. So yeah, of course, it's not. That's not the
He'll never
haters. It's
change
also
it.
internally.
Sign
He'll
other people up
never
for my
change ever since he
battles.
was 9. Always the same. And he couldn't
agree.
keep his hand to the Castro. He was stealing him blind, you know that.
Nobody cares to get a haircut.
I should have stopped him about that chance.
Just shut the fuck up. Most people choose not to engage because the answer is then saying I don't agree. Well, that's false. That's false. I mean, how many videos do we get from, let's say, Charlie when some guy stole a candy bar? Okay, some guy stole a candy bar at the store. We get five videos. Yo, dude, this wonky guy did this and that, whatever, right? But I mean, some big issue that's
Yeah, some guy
polarizing,
licked
how many
the
takes we
ice
get about
cream
that?
in
Not a
the
lot. It's a
Walmart
risk. Guys, I'm not saying Charlie's a bad person.
and
It's a
posted it
risk,
on
it's a
TikTok.
risk.
And now we get 5 videos about that. And then Louis Guy, you get a passing
Right?
mention
I
for
view
5
getting
seconds
involved
in a
with all
stream,
that
and then
stuff
he immediately
as
covers it
being
up
one
and
of
starts
the
talking about this
biggest
something else.
mistakes that
And they
I've
all
ever
do
made
that.
in my entire
They
life.
all do that, or they just
I'm not
completely
saying
ignore it
dissing.
and don't even
I'm
let
telling you,
anything
it's a
slip
risk
through.
for no
They
reason.
purposefully
Charlie doesn't take these
look
risks.
the other way.
It's pointless. I agree with it. It's not a. I'm not
Because they
I'm
know
not
that
saying it's a
there's
bad
brain
thing.
rot and
Hold
people
on,
aren't
we need to
going
watch
to
this
agree
clip
with
in 1 minute,
everything.
otherwise we're gonna be here for 10 minutes.
Biggest mistakes that I've ever made in my entire life.
But yeah,
Hold
but that's
Kind of
how
a
it
big
is now.
thing, right? But I view getting
streaming is
involved with all that
degenerate.
stuff
It's a dead
as
end.
being one of the
Dead end
biggest
job, or you
mistakes
can
that
make
I've
a
ever
fuck
made
ton
in
of
my
money with
entire
it.
life.
But you're not.
I do.
Even if you do,
And
you're a degen.
I don't regret
And
doing it
you
because
live
I think I needed to have done it
in
in order
hell.
to know that it was a mistake.
Right? You know how fucking dog
But
shit it is to be a
I
streamer.
had everything. I had everything good.
It is the
Everything
most
was fine.
miserable
I
thing
was
you could
happy.
ever do.
My channel was
Ever.
doing great, and
Right? Even if you
I
just
didn't
play games
understand
and that's
the
all you
amount
do,
of
it's
social
so
pressure
fucking
and
miserable,
social
man.
obligations that it would put on me, and that amount of
Real.
social pressure and social obligations that it
You
put
don't
on
get a
me
break.
were
You are the
massively
joke.
emotionally
You are
like
right, basically what
devastating.
you
Hey,
do.
brother.
You spend so
Brother,
much time
chat.
only thinking about
Bro.
entertainment that nothing is fun anymore. Everything is
lying.
misery.
I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm
Right?
actually getting extra
Play
shit
fun
on
game
me.
for once, it's
Chat,
terrible.
This has been my shit since the beginning.
Watch a cool
Not
video, it's a
associate
waste
with
of time.
anybody. Nothing
It's
can be held
boring,
against
it's
me.
in misery. Right?
Everything.
It's
that I
miserable,
do
man.
Only affect me and fuck
It's
everybody else.
terrible.
It's just what it is. You have no ties. That's the place you want to be at.
It's
Extreme
like
word, right? That's like you're explaining
being
a
an
bomb.
alcoholic. You just
But,
build
like,
up
they
a
were corrosive
tolerance,
to me.
but you build up a
And
tolerance
they really,
for
really
anything
negatively
fun.
affected my mental.
So that's not good.
And I ended up going through with things and doing
And it-
things
and it's because you
streaming in
have to do it
cases
for
where
12
I really
hours a day.
didn't really want
Right, so
to, or I
you
needed to
just
step
build up a
away.
tolerance, man.
And it
It's
basically
so miserable.
overcommitted me to a lot of social events and social activities that I'm not comfortable doing. And I didn't really understand that it was that bad for me
Moist covered it
until I was in it.
Oh, I have to apologize. I actually on that one topic I took a guess. About Moist. I was actually wrong.
You got kicked out of OTK, didn't you? Yeah, I'm not involved with OTK at all. Pretty much.
What's playing?
Nope.
What's
United
playing?
Healthcare.
What's
Done.
playing?
I haven't
What's
been
playing?
for a while, and so yeah.
I apparently covered it. I didn't see. And oh, was that a video?
I was doing it, and I was like, okay, well, fuck. Like, I'm stuck doing this thing, and like, I did it for a very, very long time because I felt like I had an obligation to the people that put their trust in me, and I did that for as long as I possibly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's relatable, Swaka.
It puts me in positions where there are certain instances of things that I can't really do. Like, for example, like if I'm going to the White House or I'm doing anything that's like very politically focused or anything else like that, it entangles the different companies that I would be involved with in those issues, right? And it might not really make sense that that's the case, but it is the case. And I'll talk about this for like probably 5 minutes because I know that a lot of people have asked about it, and I'll just kind of like get into it and explain it. And so that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons why I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want to go and do my own thing and focus on my own thing. And I know that a lot of people have tried to create the narrative that my friends are like betraying me and they're pushing me away. This is absolutely not true. I've read comments like this. This might sound weird, but, and I would ask you, like, if you don't believe this, I would ask any other streamer, find me one streamer that's had a negative interaction with me.
True.
Right? I mean, even if somebody's gonna say
Oh,
Poke,
right,
right?
yeah.
I was talking to Poke in DMs, right? And we're like,
Miz was and is polarizing in some other ways, whatever. And I think those kind of, he hasn't publicly and probably internally probably doesn't go against Asmon. I'm pretty sure a lot of people at OTK. I'm sure some parts of OTK though feel certain ways though.
I'll probably talk to him like a little bit more because like there's a
Poke is
lot
not
of, like,
OTK.
there's been like 4 or 5 years of like context behind that. And so, like, I'm trying to work things out and at least make sure that he and I are on the same page with things, right? And so, like, Yamato, well, I don't even really hate Yamato. I just think he acted like a bitch, right? Like, I mean, I don't even hate the guy. So it's not like if I saw him, I'd be like, oh, I fucking hate you. It's on site. No, I'm just like, okay, well, whatever, right?
End of an era. Gone, 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 gone.
Who are these people?
Also,
Okay. When's Until Dawn remake? Yeah, I was talking about this mostly.
And I always want to do what I can to make sure they can hang on to their livelihoods. So just know that we're trying to make changes to make it a better org. And
Anyway, you guys know my take about this. I think the holding on to the livelihoods is always going to be a terrible argument in a creative sphere, creative like department.
probably hear more about
I
that in
get
the
it.
future, the immediate future. And if we can't make it a better place, if we can't make it a happier, healthier place, then I'll have to
One true liberal.
reevaluate where I stand.
Interesting.
Liptards.
Okay.
Next.
The whole DK brand risk scene.
Yeah, I have one more
Exactly.
videos.
That's exactly what I mean. The whole DK.
It's some political video about China.
There's a brand risk scene. So the company itself needed
South
a no front
China
risk.
Sea,
Well,
you know.
yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it's like
I know. That's
if
better
the
where
foundation
Hong Kong
is
is.
based off of brand risks.
Hong
You
Kong.
can't really sell it as like a non-brand risk. People that are becoming involved know that
Vietnam.
people there's polarizing personalities and their jobs are at risk.
China.
To try to hold people and say, guys, stop doing what we hired you to do because now we have jobs over it is fucking brain dead. What a stupid fucking take. Actually, zero IQ peasant take. I'm not gonna
W
lie.
goat. Another W take from the goat. And that's why he's the goat. Because the goat never loses, right? He's the goat after all. You
Look
can
at
never
this map of the
expect
most
him to
disputed
lose.
water in the world.
Yeah.
It's a sea that is
It's
claimed
Shanghai.
Chips.
No.
Next.
It's Hong Kong.
7 countries.
Tensions are
Vietnam,
rising in one of the most hotly contested
Philippines,
regions on the planet, the South China Sea.
Malaysia.
Including one that no one likes to talk about.
Taiwan.
This sea is peppered with tiny islands,
Brunei.
most of which look like this. Small rocks and sunken reefs. But even still, the countries here fight over these little rocks. They build bases on them. They create new islands where there were none. And today I want to show you why. Specifically why China claims all of this ocean as theirs, basically the entire South China Sea. I want to show you what China hopes to gain.
For a second. Your takes are regurgitated bullshit. Okay, that somebody else fed you. Okay, my geopolitics knowledge and takes are probably 10 times better than yours, even though yours are somebody else's, which is insane to me. Which
From
is
this
actually insane.
both resources and strategic
W, he's the goat.
territory. But perhaps more importantly,
My goat knows.
I
He
want
knows.
to show you the
He's the
story
goat.
that China tells its people and the world about this water.
Chinese construction crews have been dumping massive amounts of white sand.
All your takes are Western POV only, out of touch, overly libtarded dog shit. Like the world gives a fuck about the West's opinion about what they're currently doing.
And in 7 spots in the South China Sea.
So this is the backstory of the South China Sea, and it's part 1 of a 2-part series. The first piece is this one that you're watching right now, and the second one is the modern conflict of the South China Sea that is currently heating up. That video is live right now on our second channel, Search Party.
Yo, physics, you don't like physics anymore? BZ.
So to understand how we got here, you have to rewind to look at maps from hundreds of years ago. Like this one. Here she is. I mean, there's something about seeing it on paper that just never gets old for me. So this map was commissioned by a wealthy Chinese merchant in around the early 1600s, maybe earlier according to some experts. It's the South China Sea, the map we've been looking at so far in this video, and it's mapped in surprisingly accurate detail.
It's an absolutely fascinating map because it does show in great deal trading routes from the eastern Chinese coast all the way down through Southeast Asia.
Bill Hayton is a journalist and academic who has studied the origins of
Chat, was
China's
this fun to
claim
trade
in
back
South
then or
China
not?
Sea. He's been
Yes.
walking
Sounds kinda
through
fun to me.
documents and maps that piece together the story.
Sounds like a
of how
disaster,
It was
China
fun.
got this U-shaped line.
But you also had to wait years.
At the time, China was a
To,
big,
sail
powerful
the ocean.
civilization. They were a
It was very
seafaring
slow,
culture.
yeah.
They used
Couldn't
the
click on
ocean
your
for
laptop
trade, and this
and
map
buy shit.
is kind of proof of that. You can see all these trade routes,
So it was
these
terrible.
lines here
If
that
compared
go
to
off
now, it's
into
terrible.
Southeast Asia,
But for then, it
Indonesia,
was good
and off
because
to the Indian
everything was
Ocean.
terrible back in the day.
Chat, imagine you have a bunch of sugar, like loads to go to a place that they have none of it. And they have like what your country is like needs or whatever, and they have none of it, right? And you come out with these barrels of sugar, and you come home with like massive fucking stacks of like wool or like fucking like fabric and shit. And now you go, bro, you come back home, you're like a god or something.
And
That's
importantly,
kind of hard, no?
This map shows a bunch of these islands here in the South China Sea. These are very important island groups, and soon you will understand why it is so important that in this map from the 1600s, a Chinese merchant is mapping these islands. I'm gonna put this back now. So Chinese merchants and explorers knew about these islands. No one lived on them, but they would stop over when the weather got bad. They would fish around them. Archaeologists have found Chinese pottery, bowls, and coins on these islands. But back then, the Chinese Empire didn't care about claiming these islands. There was no sense.
Chat, I would sell these guys sailing, right? Like 10 bales of sugar, right? And I would convince them to put them so that it doesn't rot or something like that in the living quarters, right? I put all the bales in it, but one of them would be gunpowder, right? And then everybody would go to sleep, right? In the boat, and I would light that shit on fire. Boom!
That they would have any value. They were just some rocks in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, a little
This
tomfoolery.
map
No,
is
Jack.
good evidence of trading
Fun.
patterns. We have evidence of trading, but we don't have evidence of ownership or occupation because really nobody cared about such things.
That is until the French arrived to Southeast Asia. You didn't think I was going to make it
It's
this
all
far
the
without
French,
talking
dude.
about Europeans claiming land, right? Setting the stage for modern conflicts.
Its navy starts to colonize what it calls Indochina, what's now Vietnam. And that, of course, brings them into direct conflict with China.
So it's the 1930s, and France has claimed ownership over these islands, which angers China and Japan. These islands, this water, it started to become more strategic to these growing empires.
So then a lot of the strategic thinkers in Britain and Paris and the US are thinking about who's going to control these little islands in the South China Sea and what does it mean?
Especially
That's me.
Japan, who had followed the example of European empires and started growing an empire of their own. By the late 1930s, Japan starts rapidly taking over this whole region, including a lot of these islands in the South China Sea.
The Japanese have started surveys and thinking, well, we can use this for a seaplane harbor or a submarine dock or something like that. During the Second World War, I mean, the South China Sea basically becomes a Japanese lake. So for the first time in history, one power controls almost the whole of the coast of the South China Sea.
Eventually, the US would enter World War II and beat back Japan, forcing them to give up control of all of this territory that it had conquered during the war, including all of these islands in the South China Sea. World World War II made it clear that all of these rocky islands were suddenly important. They were strategic locations at a very important crossroads in the world. It also made it clear that if your country doesn't claim them, someone else will. So we have a bit of a scramble for all these islands. China, of course, thinks that...
I'm trying to say, I don't know if I'll like it. I'm trying to this chicken parm, but I'm scared it's gonna be dog shit.
Most of this is theirs. Remember the maps and the pottery?
It looks dry as
Vietnam,
fucking
who's going through an independence
disgusting,
movement, is
to be
split in
honest.
two, but the South comes out and says a lot of these islands are close to Vietnam. Not to mention their former colonizer France formally claimed them, so they should belong to Vietnam.
The noodle sauce.
The Philippines
like
is busy
it's
establishing its newly independent country, so it doesn't claim any of these islands at first. But, strangely, one Filipino businessman goes out to a cluster of 53 islands and claims that he discovered them. And he declares his own country called, wait for it, the Free Territory of Freedom Land. That name.
That's
now, this
mine.
Filipino businessman only occupied these islands for like 90 days, but his claim technically lasted like a couple decades before eventually the Filipino government forced him to give it up. They actually tried to use his claim to say that these islands belong to the Philippines. I mean, you can see how difficult this is getting. There are hundreds of little tiny islands scattered throughout the South China Sea.
I mean, technically he got there, right? So I mean, he owns it as much as anybody else, right?
They weren't that important for many centuries, and suddenly they became very important all at once. But now let me show you the map that will change everything. This is perhaps the biggest moment in the history of the South China Sea. Hold on a second. Wait, actually, before I do, I should pause and thank the sponsor of today's video because it actually has a lot to do with my goal for this video, which is I'm trying to all of the awareness of this moment. It's right after World War II, so it's like the late 1940s. There's the nationalist government, the Republic of China is what it's called. They're like the main government of China. But then there is a communist revolution, a bunch of revolutionaries that are fighting to overthrow the government. It's a civil war. But even during this civil war, the Republic of China, the nationalists, aren't going to let all these other countries take over these islands. So they send their navy out to some of the largest islands in these groups. And these ships show up to these islands basically saying we're going to claim these for China. Oh, and little side note here, guess where they got these naval ships? From the United States of America, who gave them to the Republic of China to support them because they were fighting communists. But they're using these ships to claim islands in the South China Sea.
And so the 12th of December 1946 is the first time that any Chinese official goes to a Spratly Island and sticks a flag in it. Nobody ever lives there permanently, but people go and stick a flag, and then the other guy comes and pulls the flag out and sticks their own flag in.
And then they release this map. Take a look. This is the official map where they claim what they say is their water in the South China Sea. It's made up of these dashes, 11 dashes to be precise, drawn around the periphery of the entire South China Sea. This map is basically saying, hey guys, this water has always been ours and remains ours. Stay back. Now that Japan is defeated, we are going to formally assert that this water is ours.
Yeah, Taiwan.
Holy.
China.
Holy.
China.
You can't take our country and you can't take our game. Holy Chad. Holy Chad. Bro, where was his energy when he was in power, though? I mean, he still was in power, but still, though.
Of course, as it always has been. This is the most important map and the most important moment in this history. I've always been mesmerized by the sort of ambiguity and ambition of this line. And I don't have a solid theory as to the motives of the people who decided to draw it and what they were after. And again, especially in the context of a divided nationalist government that is being hounded by communist revolutionaries and soon about to lose a war, and yet they make time to draw a map and release it to the world. What's going on here?
So at the end of the Second World War, you still had a country which didn't really, define its boundaries. And so they called upon geography professors in 1946, specifically with regard to the sea, to try and work out which islands China was going to claim. And they go back to this old atlas of 1936, and they say, this is where the line should be.
Okay, back up to China, where there's a civil war happening. And one side is winning, the communists, led by Mao Zedong. And the Republic of China is fleeing, looking for safety. It's their government, their military, and their civilian followers, millions of people, all running away from the communists. And they end up here at this 180-kilometer strait, where they cross it to this Chinese island of Taiwan. They were safe here. The communists couldn't cross this strait because their navy and air force weren't strong enough. Plus, they figured that the US would come to their defense. So now we still have these two Chinas, both claiming to be the real China, and who both hate each other. Okay, back to the South China Sea. What did Mao Zedong do with the South China Sea after he took over mainland China? Well, he adopted the same map that the Republic of China had drawn, this 11-dash line that encompasses the whole sea. So now
But what about people that lived in Taiwan before? Did they just got eradicated? As in, like, Republic of China is now Taiwan? What happened to people that were there before?
you have both of these Chinas,
It was
China and
China.
Taiwan, both claiming the same body
It's
of water.
China.
And this big claim
There
overlaps
were a bunch
with
of
the
settlers,
claims coming
mostly
in from all these other
merchants,
countries.
that came there, and also
it was
places
all in
like
China.
Singapore.
So basically,
you
the
know,
whole thing shrunk
those type of
to
places.
Taiwan.
A lot of Chinese
It's not
merchants
that
that
they
settled there.
went to
But there's
Taiwan
still
and they
native
dominated
people
or
there.
whatever. They
But they're
just
just a very small minority. Because
shrunk
when
to
they
Taiwan.
lived there, it was
So this is
basically
our
a
context.
jungle
This is
shithole
how we
island
got
that's
here.
removed
China
from
feels entitled
society.
to all of this water.
And when
They
the
draw an
Chinese came,
11-dash
they
line. They
just
split
far
into two
outnumbered
Chinas who
them.
both claim this 11-dash line.
So they
and
just
it's
got
like
us and
1950 or
and
something.
they're Chinese now. Or Taiwanese.
Now,
same
a
thing,
few
it's
years
China.
later, the mainland China, the communists, did remove 2 of these dashes from the 11-dash line. They gave up an island and some water back to North Vietnam as a gesture of friendship to their communist comrades. So now mainland China has a 9-dash line, and the Republic of China, Taiwan, has an 11-dash line. I mean, this is getting weird. As the 20th century progresses, the scramble continues as countries start backing up their claims with military might, trying to establish a physical presence on the islands that they claim. So Taiwan sends their troops back to
Was that AI? What was that?
establish a physical presence on the islands that they claim.
Real.
Oh, it's
So
clouds.
Taiwan sends their troops back to Taiping Island, which they still hold today. And things start heating up even more when the global economy starts to come online, and we realize that this water is along critical shipping lanes. It's good water for fishing, and it is strategically placed militarily. And then in the late 1960s, they discover oil in the South China Sea. And once again, the race is on.
So it's a kind of, all of these emerging nation states standing up and standing proud, really.
South Vietnam tries to make good on its claim in the Spratly Islands by sending settlers to claim the islands and working with foreign oil companies to start drilling. China starts drilling too in the Paracels. A lot of Chinese fishermen are also down here, and South Vietnam doesn't like this, so they send their army to kick these fishermen out. China doesn't take kindly to this, and so they then send 6 naval vessels and 2 support jets to fight the South Vietnamese, taking full control of these islands and getting into a clash that kills 70 Vietnamese troops. And once they do this, China decides they don't want to leave. So they start setting up more infrastructure on these islands, having a permanent presence and controlling them completely. Over the years, the islands start filling up with more and more military bases and outposts. It becomes a crowded neighborhood where everyone is fighting for a slice of oil or shipping lanes, minerals, or just a strategic military location.
I'm not going to defend that. I'm just saying, like, occupation is occupation, right? You can see how that causes friction, right? If there's no way of a resolution, there's gonna be war. I mean, that's like evident. No, that's kind of how it works. Whether you're a fisherman or not, if everybody is populating and occupying a space, it's like they own it in most of the ways we use the term, right? Like they kind of own a space. If nobody can do it. So that causes friction.
Needless to say, this way of doing things is not a great way to solve territorial disputes in the water. Like, whoever shows up first and puts their little pushpin on the map, it's not a way to avoid conflict. Luckily, the law of the sea was...
Hey, I'm getting good at this.
Pushpin on the map, it's not a way to avoid conflict. Luckily, the law of the sea was just around the corner. So while all these countries were fighting over the South China Sea, the international community was working on solving the problem of how to determine what country gets what water. The world was getting better at finding valuable resources in the deep ocean, and we really needed rules on who owned what.
Communist China takes part in the discussions on the law of the sea as a full member, and so therefore it's kind of if you like, represents something that they agreed to. So in theory, it's bound by the rules of UNCLOS, which say that, you can claim territorial sea of 12 nautical miles. You can then make a resource claim that goes up to 200 nautical miles. But that doesn't really fit with the U-shaped line claim.
And almost every country on Earth agreed to this. They ratified UNCLOS, except for one big exception, the United States of America. Yes, the United States, while they do follow the norms of UNCLOS, have not ratified it, which is kind of a trend with the US. Like, they want to preserve the global order, but they don't want to necessarily agree to all of the laws because they don't like to be constrained.
Fair.
W. All about freedom, They're free.
Back to the South China Sea, UNCLOS was supposed to create order, create a framework through which all these countries can make their claims and work things.
Well, how's that fair? They're the biggest and the most powerful. They've done a lot to get to that spot. Why should everything be equal? Why should, I'm just saying, don't get mad at me. Why should everybody be equal when they've worked for the top spot? It's insane. What is that, communism? What is that, fucking bullshit? Fuck that shit.
Peaceably.
Fuck
but
that.
That didn't happen. In fact, the whole 200 nautical mile rule incentivized countries to try to claim these little islands, because if you claim this little island, you get 200 nautical miles off of that island. So countries continue to build things on these islands, especially China, who's built all sorts of military bases and has even resorted to building new islands where there were none. Which, someday I want to go there and see what that looks like. I see it from above.
This shit take, but as I remember, it's like when the vaccines were coming out, right? Those were going to go to other countries, but first, United States was going to take care of themselves because they're the one making it, right? If they're the one that are making this shit, right? They can take care of themselves first. It shouldn't be equal. Would you agree with that or not?
Of these satellite photos of how they're dredging up all of this sand and putting it on these reefs, but it just never made sense to me how they can.
That's not the same. I think that makes sense.
And so now China has then sort of said, well, we're not just talking about one island, we're talking about groups of islands. And if they're a group of islands, could we draw a line around the whole group of islands and then claim from there? And everyone else is saying, no, that's not what it says in the text.
China continues to this day to claim the 9-dash line as their official claim to the South China Sea. And by the way, so does Taiwan, though they claim the 11-dash line. We don't hear about that much. In 2016, the Philippines sued China in the International Court of Arbitration, saying that China was violating UNCLOS and infringing in the Filipino EEZ with their 9-dash line. China declined to participate in these proceedings, saying that the court had no jurisdiction to rule in what they view as Chinese waters. But the court proceeded and came out with a ruling that said that China's 9-dash line was totally illegal, or lawless in their words.
Yeah, I think it's significant that China isn't just saying, it's ours, go away, we've got a bigger navy than you. It is also saying what we're doing is legal, but other countries don't accept the legal arguments.
I'm looking at the legal rebuttal from the Chinese government during this tribunal, and it basically tells the story we just laid out here in this video. The Chinese activities in the South China Sea date back over 2,000 years. China was the first country to discover, name, explore, and exploit the resources of the South China Sea islands, and the first to continuously exercise sovereign powers over them. Then they talk about how in the 30s and 40s, foreigners, especially Japan, illegally seized some parts of the South China Sea. There were some wars, and then after World War II, the Chinese government resumed exercising its sovereignty over the South China Sea. And that all of these acts affirm China's territorial sovereignty and relevant maritime rights and interests in the South China Sea. This history is core to their claim.
At the bottom, it's an argument over who owns each individual rock and reef. And China, has a good claim to...
I mean, yeah, what's the counterclaim? That the one guy from Philippines owned the whole thing because he said he did a while back or some shit? Like what?
To being the first country to have stuck a flag in certain, rocks or reefs and then maintained a presence there.
Okay, I understand the argument now that we've gone through the history, but if maps, pottery, fishing activity all thousands of years ago is what you need to make a modern day maritime claim, then other countries like Vietnam and even the Philippines would have a similar claim. One thing I've learned is that the time machine game of who got here first is not a useful way to settle border disputes. It's just not. You can always go back further. But even still, China continues to assert this 9-dash line, even as it causes major tension with almost all their neighbors.
And this gets to a really important aspect of this water. It's the reason we started this video showing you all of those old maps, that pottery. China's 9 dashes on a map is not a matter of law, but of national identity. It's a core part of the country's national story, of China being this continuous civilization, uninterrupted for thousands of years. And again, this is Taiwan's story and claim as well.
When Xi Jinping talks about, the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, there's definitely a territorial component to that. And
okay, let me guess. So basically, it's like people didn't really care about them unless it was like a tension spot, right? Because there's trade routes, then they have to care that much, right? Because nobody was putting like a bunch of houses on all the things and then putting all the bases early, right? The claims for it were really small early on, right? And as there was more trade and more importance around that area, now they kind of tighten the knob or whatever, right? Because it's gonna.
The U-shaped line is printed
like
in every Chinese passport now.
Tug of war
it's very much alive. It's part of the sort of patriotic education campaign. Chinese school kids are taught about the line,
but nobody's ever cared that much about it.
China, was humiliated by the foreign powers, and that this, was a sign of China becoming a, respected nation state.
This claim and others in the region has contributed to a rising and falling and rising of tension over the years, and right now, that tension is rising, and that is the next part of this story, which continues on our second channel, Search Party, where Sam will take you through the story of what happens next, to tell you...
Oh, I guess it's hard to care because it was so far back when that the mother suckers, they don't have the technology to do all this shit. Because of the, it's like early age. They can't get all the materials and shit to really build
Bronze Age.
Why this tension is heating up. Why Chinese Coast Guard boats are ramming into Filipino boats, using knives to pop Filipino rafts, and why the Philippines is fighting back. This is a region that will continue to be one of the most important geopolitical choke points.
So, the people that owned it first, right? If they saw this being a massive tension point, why don't they just put a bunch of fucking landmines everywhere, right? Like go ever put a bunch of landmines. And when the mother suckers come in, they're like, yo, guys, we want this shit. Okay, yeah, maybe you own it then, maybe, I guess. They start going and they, yo, okay, this is my, bang, boom. Yeah, let's put a house over, boom, boom, boom. They're like, okay, you know what? Fuck it, we're not doing this shit. We don't want it anymore. You can have it or whatever, because they have the map.
Yeah, just give the strongest country the right to rule.
This is a region that will continue to be one of the most important geopolitical choke points in our world. So I recommend you check out that video. If you like Search Party, make sure to subscribe. And thanks for being here today. I'll see you in the next video.
Alright, see you, mate.
Oh, we have a shirt that shows the entire world map and a new channel that we just launched that tackles internet mysteries.
You can get that for way cheaper. And... right, you don't need a world map shirt from your YouTuber. You can do it for any company, really, that makes shirts with the world map on it.